This is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We are a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, nononsenseforex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 253 is brought to us by Blueberry Markets. Apart from having the world's best customer service, apart from having some of the most options you're ever going to see on a centralized platform, Forex, metals, crypto, stocks, all of it, Blueberry Markets now offers some of the most competitive rates and spreads in the entire industry. Feel free to look this up. If you have chosen to go the non-blockchain route in your trading and you are outside of the United States and North Korea, Blueberry Markets is the easiest choice on the board by far, and you get extra benefits by clicking my affiliate link, which you can find in the Blueberry Markets blog, which can be found down below in the show notes. I find the best out there, and then I make the best even better for my listeners. So switch all of your trading over to Blueberry Markets today. You will not regret it. To date, after 7 years affiliating for them, almost nobody has. It is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, and how's it going out there, contrarians? How's your life out there in contrarian land? Is the sun shining? Birds singing? Feeling good? All right, well, I am getting ready to completely bulldoze all of those good feelings. It's a fair warning. You may want to wait until you're not having such a good day to listen to this, because I am going to be on one, and this is going to be a problems-based podcast for the majority of it. And I'll be getting political. I always try to do my best to warn you when this is about to happen, because we are going to talk about the state of the world and how the world is and always has been completely against us. And then, of course, what you can do about it. But everybody, especially in the West, just seems to have Stockholm Syndrome. And they just sit around acting like a bunch of masochists saying, hey, I know life sucks. I know you're just making it worse, but the most I'm ever going to do is complain about it. But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm certainly not going to come over that wall, which means you can just keep doing whatever it is you want to do to me. I might vote you out, but the next guy's going to do the same thing. In politics, even wins end up as losses. Because there are certain things which are just never going to change, probably never going to change in our lifetime. For starters, fiat currency is only going to get worse. We have spoken about this in the past. If you don't recall, I had a whole episode where I mentioned how in the decade of the 2020s, CPI says that the United States dollar has lost about 25% of its purchasing power just in this decade alone. Now, we here in Contrarian Land know just how bullshit CPI numbers actually are, so I turned to John Williams' shadow stats, which are typically much more accurate, and by his numbers, the actual loss of purchasing power just this past decade, and we're just past the halfway mark of it. But those numbers say that the loss of purchasing power is closer to 65%. Now, as is often the case, the answer usually lies somewhere in the middle, but even if it's all the way to the left side, that's not very comforting. That is very, very disturbing. And people will say, well, wages have also gone up that much. No, they haven't. Maybe in very particular sectors they have. And minimum wage, which a lot of the country is on, did not go up at all during this time. I'm a big believer that minimum wage should go up with inflation. But it doesn't. It just stays right where it is, which is brutal. But there's a reason why absolutely nobody was complaining on social media back in 2019 about basic everyday things just becoming completely unaffordable. But now they are. Has the abundance of these things gotten worse? No. Have supply chains gotten worse? A little bit, but not to where you would see things just becoming completely unaffordable. What's been the big reason for this change? People just can't seem to figure it out. And the reason they can't figure it out is because they were taught on purpose to only look at one side of the equation, to only look at the numerator and never the denominator. Fiat currency, at least in the West, was always the safe play. In fact, if you ever took a risk in the financial world, the only reason it was considered risky is because you might lose some of that perfect fiat currency. And we can't have that. But thanks to social media, some people, very few people, honestly, around the world, have at least woken up to this concept. and they are taking measures to fight it. But it still sucks, and it sucks for most people. Even people who have the foresight to put their money to things like gold and Bitcoin, the prices still didn't go down, and you still have to spend fiat currency to buy those things more often than not. So it just sucks for everybody, and spoiler alert, it's never going to get better. Like, if inflation just goes up a little bit this year, it only went up a little bit back in 2025, but that doesn't mean the previous inflation gets erased. At this point, inflation just tells us how much worse it's going to get from here. Inflation and fiat currency debasement is absolute theft on every single possible level. And we have no choice but to either sit there and deal with it or take preventative measures against it. And any smart contrarian would be very wise to do whatever they can to take measures against what is an inevitable calamity in our financial system. Yet even those people, even the gold crowd, even the Bitcoin crowd, even us contrarians, conveniently, very conveniently, seem to love to ignore what I think is an equally tragic problem out there. What else is also theft on most levels? Taxation. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about this. But I want to start you off with a quote that I will come back to, and always remember this quote if you were not already aware of it. The late George Carlin famously said, "It's a big club, and you ain't in it. And no matter who you vote for, even if it's your candidate, even if your guy wins, you still ain't in it." So take fiat debasement, which is affecting everybody negatively all the time, and then just compound it with egregious taxes. And I'll explain what I mean by this because, yes, taxes do go to good things, but it is extremely lazy and extremely shady for anybody to sit there and say something like that, put a period at the end of that sentence, and then act like they made a salient point. Now, for starters, with all the fiat currency debasement, with the insane rate at which it has devalued because of government fuck-ups, you would think they would at least give us a break on taxes. But no. Taxes are that very thing, really, us paying for their fuck-ups and their inefficiency. So they're probably never going to go down. And if you ever do see a particular tax, especially something like income tax, ever go down, just know that when it goes down, other taxes are almost certainly going to rise. Whether that's property taxes, state, provincial taxes, VAT tax, whatever the case is. However, if one tax goes down and three go up, guess which one they are going to announce very loudly? Of course, the one that went down, because they know you're stupid and not paying attention, while they continue to laugh all the way to the bank because it is a big club and you ain't in it. And because they know you don't pay very close attention to any of this, they do very gaslighty things to you, such as, I can say this in the United States, this is probably a lot of countries, when if you have a job and you file your taxes, you typically get a refund back. And this makes people very happy. They're like, oh yay, I get to go get my taxes filed. I might have to pay somebody to do it or pay for software, but I'm going to get a lot more money back. Yay, taxes. Then, God forbid, if you ever break free from the 9 to 5 and start your own business, you find out right away what taxes actually do. And then you have that Cardi B moment. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. To where you're like, oh my God, I am going to dedicate the rest of my life to lowering my tax bill as much as I possibly can. Because this is insane. But most employees don't understand this because it's not right in front of them. They don't see it. Another way they get you is to act like taxes are this wonderful thing, and you should be so privileged to have super high taxes. For one, the one I love the most is when I hear somebody from Canada or the UK or Denmark or a place like that talk about their wonderful free healthcare. Let me make this very, very clear. Unless you are an illegal migrant, you do not get free health care. You idiot. Stop saying that. It's not true. It's them, the government, getting one over on you and you happily obliging with a big stupid smile on your face. You absolutely pay for this health care in the form of taxes. And I still get pushback on this. They're like, no, it's free. I'm like, okay, who pays the doctors then? And they're like, well, no, the government does. It's government subsidized. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Then who pays the government? Oh, yeah, that's you. You just don't pay directly. You don't pay when you walk into the doctor's office. So therefore, you don't think you're paying anything. And you have very educated people in these countries honestly believing they get free health care. In the U.S., it's not much better. You ever heard of free public schools? LOL. You're paying for that too. There's an old saying you would hear sometimes in movies from like the 80s and 90s that says, don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining. But that's exactly what these governments do. They piss all over you, and then they tell you it's raining, and then you sit there and say, oh, I guess it must be raining, as your life just gets worse and worse and worse. So, before the liberals jump all over me, I understand that taxes do go to good things, and there's really no way to determine. I guess if you did some really deep analysis and some investigative reporting, you could determine, okay, do states or countries need to charge this much to pay for these things? I don't really know the answer to that. I can assume, based on what I know about governments, that the answer is probably not. But I can't say this with any certainty. Saw a tweet from a guy the other day who was talking about this very thing. We're just talking about that, hey, taxes go to pay for things, and that's why we should pay taxes. And it wasn't even a very intelligent tweet, but the responses he got were so unhinged from people who were just tired of paying high taxes that it actually made him look very grounded and very intelligent. Now, I didn't jump in because I don't get into fights on X, because I'm not miserable and I got real shit to do. But this is another classic case of people only looking at one side of the equation. So the United States, for example, I'll just make up a random number. Let's say I'm paying 30% of my income to pay for roads, schools, hospital, government salaries. Oh, God, government worker salaries, Jesus. But all the things that they claim taxes go to. Okay, fine, 30%. I worked hard for it, I earned it, but here's 30% of it. Out of all I give you, how much of that is either stolen or squandered? I would put good money that at least half of that I give you is either stolen or squandered on stupid, nonsensical programs that don't go anywhere, and programs that were often set up for the purpose of stealing money. Now, maybe 10, 20 years ago, this would have sounded crazy. Now, based on what we have been learning, or as they say in Minnesota, leering, I think 50% might have been too low. The fraud going on in my country alone is staggering. And if you think your country's any better, it might be, but it won't be by a lot. They just uncovered one fraudulent activity in California that was costing billions. And the way California is fighting back is straight out of the Joseph Stalin playbook. They're passing a law banning independent journalism in their country because of one piece of fraud that one guy was able to find. Like, there's actually citizens in the state of California voting for this. Liberals, by the way. They absolutely love taxes, and they don't seem to mind at all that people are stealing most of it. So the way I look at it, not only should I be paying much less taxes than I do now, I should get a 10 to 20 year break on paying taxes, period, because of all the money that's been stolen from me for most of my adult life. But of course, it's not going to work that way, ever. And to make matters worse, because all they ever do is rub salt into the wound, of all this fraud going on, especially when it comes from the higher levels, how many of these people are going to go to jail? How many of these people are going to have to pay the money back? 0? Brilliant. In California, so far, it's 0. Minnesota, it's been a handful. But none of that money's ever getting paid back. And there will be no explanation as to why these people are not going to jail. However, God forbid, you, as a regular citizen, don't pay your taxes. Oh my God. Now you really got problems. See how this works? It's one big club. Man, we ain't in it. And again, we have an entire political party in the United States, and I'm sure, Europe and Canada and Australia, you guys are dealing with this as well, who want more of it. Bananas. The more government you can give them, the better. Stealing ass, cheating ass, never doing anything in our best interest government. More, more, more. Govern me harder, Daddy. But we need liberal governments because they build programs for the poor people. No, they don't. Well, I mean, they technically do build them, but then all of the money that's supposed to go to them just ends up getting stolen, or as much as they can possibly steal without getting noticed. Oh, and they almost never work. If they did work, we would see sharp declines in homelessness and poverty in blue states and blue cities, but we don't. We see the exact opposite. Yet the solution is to make more of it. Got it. However, conservatives, most of you want less government, but guess what you've gotten under Donald Trump? More government. I think we have more now than we've ever had before. Caleb Jones said it perfectly. He's like, all we do in the United States and most countries is vote for the lesser of two evils. There is no good party out there. And this is why the West is collapsing. And if you really think you can vote your way out of it, you're absolutely insane. Yet this is what a lot of people truly believe. It doesn't matter who's in office, contrarians. It's one giant club, and we're not in it. And what's worse is most citizens just seem to be completely fine with it because they get gaslighted so much because they only look at one side of the equation. They don't look at the dying fiat currency. They don't look at the oppressive taxes that only go up and go right into corrupt people's pockets. And so as long as they're not hungry, that's the only way people will ever actually fight back. As long as you can just keep them not hungry and a little bit of bread and circus here and there, you can just keep doing this. And that's what they're going to do. It is not going to stop because there is no reason for it to stop. One good thing I'll say about Trump is at the very least in his first term, he lowered the corporate tax rate from like a crazy 38 down to 21. And that brought a lot of multinational companies back to the States. And you have scores of companies leaving Europe, for example, to come to the United States and do business. And that's good for the country. And in turn, that is good for its citizens. But it's only a small part of the entire equation. Dying fiat currency and out-of-control taxes matter a lot more to your average person. And they're only getting worse, and they will only continue to get worse. And don't ever let people gaslight you as well into thinking that some of these are only going to apply to the rich. That's how it starts. California is going to put this tax on billionaires until they inevitably run out of billionaires to tax because they've all left, because that's what billionaires do. They don't just sit there and take it in the ass. That's what you do. That's not what they do. They get up and leave. And so when there's no more billionaires, they're going to go to the millionaires and on down. There was another saying, I'm not even going to look it up, but I just remember it's like, there's no such thing as a temporary tax. Don't worry, citizens, it's just going to be this. And even though it's insulting to your intelligence, they do this for the same reason they were doing all the things I spoke about earlier, because they know most people are going to be too dumb to realize what's really going on. And a lot of what I talked about is very U.S.-centric, but Jesus Christ, Europe, Canada, Australia, all the Western countries, you guys are paying way more. And for what exactly? I mean, if you feel like it's a fair trade-off, then that's fine. But man, this is one of those times I feel like you got to get a little bit of American in you. Like, we started a revolution over 3% taxes. We fight. Most of you just sit there. And that's exactly why you get the worst of it. You're donking half of your money away to a government who does very little in your best interest. Hey, I know I pay a lot in taxes, but I get free healthcare and free social services. Oh, do you? Nigel? Wow, that's crazy. A lot of them nowadays are prioritizing non-citizens over their actual citizens. And you're giving them half of what you earn to do that. At what point exactly does it become too much? I always ask people this, I'm like, put a number on it, and then hold yourself to that number. Because what's going to happen is if you don't put a hard number on this, if you don't put a real breaking point out there and mark it down, all they're going to do is what they've been doing. They're going to do this very slowly. They're going to gaslight the hell out of you. You're going to believe it, and you're going to be like, all right, well, at least it's just a little bit. That's not so bad. And then it's just going to be a little bit more later, and then more later, until they've gone way past your breaking point, but you just don't realize it because they boiled the frog slowly. And then what's worse is even if you do have that breaking point and that breaking point gets reached, how many of you are actually going to do something about it? I would set the over-under at 5%. But for the 5% of you who this might apply to, finally, welcome to the solutions portion of episode 253. I hope I got you guys riled up. I say it all the time. You guys know this podcast also goes to YouTube. And I treat the comments section there with the utmost of care and importance because I do not want it devolving into every other fucking comment section, which has everybody sitting there talking about the problem with absolutely no solution. That's what doomers do. And you guys know my thoughts on those people. So if I see any of that, I shut it down. If I see any spam, I shut it down. I really care about the comment section because there are so few of us out there. We need to be able to put the few minds we have together and solve some of these problems, create actual solutions. And it helps if you don't just have one lunatic speaking. It helps if you have like 10 or 12 of us coming together with our ideas and trying to solve some of these problems. So here's what I propose. For the only time I might ever do this. If you want to go into the comments section and rant and rave about how shitty your country and your government and the world is, liberal, conservative, makes no difference. Come right on in and give it to us. But on one condition, you must also provide a solution. If I just see complaining, it's going to get deleted. I have a very strict rule here. And that solution cannot be simply a solution to the fiat problem. You're like, well, I'm going to save in gold. I'm going to save in Bitcoin. You sit there and act like you're a freaking genius for attacking one of the two main problems. No. This episode is mainly about taxes. What are you doing to lessen this tax burden, which is only going to get worse over time? Because you can't just sit there and take it and pretend like they're working in your best interest. They're not. They never are. It's a one big giant club and you're not in it. And if you're going to sit there and take it for the next 30 years, what are your children going to do? What are you doing for them? Are you doing anything for them? Or are you just going to let them come right into this world and just eat shit their entire lives? Because you, probably, depending on how old you are, got to live in a pretty good time when things were prosperous and people could afford things and everything was great. You probably, if you can't do that now, you at least had the chance to do it when you were younger and growing up, and maybe even later into adulthood. And there's a decent chance that your children aren't even going to get that. So if your solution is to sit at a cafe every day and complain about things, and that's really, truly what you want to do, then that's up to you. It's your life. You can do whatever you want with it. But at least give your kids a chance, man. Set them up to succeed and let them decide if they want to do that or not. Don't be like the boomer generation, who had it probably as good as anybody had it, at least in the U.S., and then voted themselves in all these privileges, and now they're all sitting on houses that are worth millions and a big fat retirement portfolio that just never seems to go down. Don't just leave the younger generations footing the bill. What are you going to do for them? How are you going to lower and mitigate your tax bill going forward? So as far as solutions go, what I do not propose is you go out and start an actual revolution. That's dumb. Let somebody else take that risk. Now, this isn't one of those podcasts. But the end goal here is to be able to attack these problems from all sides. Because we here at the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, we look at both sides of the equation. And it's not just what we make, it's also what we save. Because making an extra $1,000 and saving an extra $1,000 is the exact same thing. And if we're only focused on earning, but not focused on saving, then we are deliberately playing the game on hard mode. Capital gains taxes and dividend taxes, don't even get me started on that. Like, I'm going to take the risk of putting my money in something that pays me a 5% dividend, and then the government's just going to come in and take 2 of that? Not okay at all. Justify that. But they never will. Now, I hope your solution, you're not sitting there with a straight face telling me how you're going to evade taxes. This is a dumb idea. I've been saying this for a while, and the crypto community, especially the Bitcoin maxis, they really hate me for this, but when don't they? The blockchain is not going to be your friend if you're doing illegal things, especially in the world of taxes. There will come a time where they're going to be able to go back 15, 20 years. And if you decided to evade taxes, or if you just simply made a mistake, they're going to get you on that. Again, why wouldn't they? When have they ever done us a favor? It's always been the opposite. You guys know my route. There are, and I don't know even how this is allowed to happen. I don't know the history of this. But I do know countries are finally trying to shut it down little by little. So I'm not sure how much time you have left for this. But I have kept my American citizenship, which I will not renounce. And I need to make a blog. I haven't done one in a while. Maybe it's time to finally make the reasons why I will never leave the U.S. blog. But I've taken the proper legal steps to minimize my taxes a lot. Now, you might be saying, well, I am an employee. I don't have my own business. I'm not doing any of the things you're doing. This doesn't really apply to me. This is exactly what one of my friends here in Mexico said to me. He's a U.S. citizen, but he has an actual job in the United States and just works remotely in Mexico and enjoys the great lifestyle and the lower cost of living. But he also has investments. And we sat down and did the math on that, and now he gets it. He is now taking the steps he needs to take, starting with residency in Paraguay. He doesn't quite know how he's going to structure it from there, but he knows that is a good first step and at least gives you options. Because the one thing we have in our favor, contrarians, is there is a competition across the world for your business. And certain countries will make it very enticing. They can make their money from other sources. They don't have to tax the crap out of their citizens. And yeah, they probably steal money too, but at least they're not stealing our money. At least our taxes are nice and low. And on top of that, if you choose to live there, you are paying a lot less for everything. And if you have children, now you can get your children into the best schools, international schools, by the way, who will speak English, for much less than you would ever do that back in the States, even if they're in public school. If you really sit down and do the math, that free public school, where your child is probably in more danger than they really should be, you can instead get them in the best schools possible in that country. And they're good. Like, you're not missing out on any level of education. In fact, you're probably getting better. There's so many reasons why people don't want to do this, but if you really weigh everything out, my God, just the money you save by living in a different country most of the time. Here in Mexico, not only am I paying about 55 cents on the dollar for everything, instead of paying 5 insurance plans, now I'm just paying 1, and that's health insurance, and it's very cheap. And I'm not paying for any illegal migrants free health care, and I'm not paying for some lazy fat ass who goes to the hospital all the time. Or if I am, I'm not paying that much at least. I'm a legal immigrant. I have done things the right way. And I don't even have a super hard stance on illegal immigration in the States. I mean, yeah, it does need to be quelled to a point. And if liberals were just doing it for votes, which they have pretty much admitted through their actions and the filibuster and all that, then yeah, that's a problem, but there is also a positive side of it. However, I don't want to pay for their fucking health care. I'll be honest with you, I think that's a completely normal thing to not want to do. And I no longer have to do that either. I mean, then I don't need a car, like just the money I save. Which again, contrarians who should see this, it's the exact same as earning more money. We contrarians are special because we can see both sides of the equation, not just the left side. We can see the earnings and the savings. And if we're smart, we treat them with the same amount of care. It all means the same on the accounting ledger. And if you can work your way towards a passport, your family, more often than not, will get to be citizens of that country too, which gives them optionality, which is something most people right now don't have. They are stuck where they are, paying what they have to pay, with absolutely no recourse. At what point is enough enough? If it's not going to be for a couple of years, well, then by then, these countries might have caught up, and now you got to pay these exorbitant exit taxes. And, here comes the same terrible citizenship-based taxation that Americans have to deal with. You have the option now, and you may not have the option later. You probably won't have the option later because governments will fight back. They said, no, you will pay for all of our terrible decisions that are only done in our best interest, not yours. And on top of that, you can never leave because double, triple, quadruple fuck you. It's a big club. We're in it. You're not. And there's absolutely nothing crazy about wanting to opt out of this. But you just better make damn sure you're early. For your family, if not for yourself.